One of the most urgent tasks for our country is to decisively defeat the climate hysteria hoax.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
The ability of CO2 to do the heavy work of creating a climate catastrophe is almost nil at this point.
The price of oil has been artificially elevated to the point of insanity.
That's not how you power a modern industrial system.
The ultimate goal of this renewable energy, plan is to reach the exact same point that we're at now.
You know who's tried that? Germany. 7 straight days of no wind for Germany. Their factories are shutting down.
They really do act like weather didn't happen prior to 1910.
Today is Friday.
That's right, Greta. It is Friday, and this is the best day of the week. Not just because the weekend is almost here, but because this is the day the Heartland Institute broadcasts the Climate Realism Show, and this is episode number 204 for those of you scoring at home. My name is Jim Lakely. I'm Executive Vice President of the Heartland Institute, and your host. Heartland is an organization that has been around for 42 years, and we are known as the leading global think tank pushing back on climate alarmism. Heartland and this show bring you the data, the science, the truth that counters the climate alarmist narrative you've been fed every single day of your life. There is nothing else quite like the Climate Realism Show streaming anywhere. So I hope you will take some time to actually bring some friends to watch this live stream every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And also like, share, and subscribe. And you can leave your comments underneath this video, which we do read. These all help convince YouTube's very mysterious algorithm to smile upon this program. And that gets the show in front of even more people. And as a reminder, big tech and the legacy media are not big fans of the way we cover climate and energy policy on this show. So Heartland's YouTube channel has been demonetized. So if you want to help out this program, and I really hope you do, please visit heartland.org/TCRS. That's heartland.org/TCRS. And that way you can join other friends of this program who help bring the show to the world every single week. And we also want to thank our streaming partners, junkscience.com, CFACT, What's Up With That, the CO2 Coalition, and our friends at Heartland UK Europe. We have a fun show today, so let's get started. We have with us today, as usual, Anthony Watts, the Senior Fellow at the Heartland Institute and the publisher of the world's most viewed website on climate change, What's Up With That? We have Linnea Lukin, Senior Fellow for Energy and Environment Policy at Heartland. We have Andy Singer, behind the scenes, making sure everything flows and looks fantastic. The Archbishop of Rancho Verde, Sterling Burnett, is off today, so we'll see him again next week. But we're very happy to have joining us today, again on the show, Chris Martz. He's a meteorologist, a country boy, and a guy who does climate and policy analysis for CFACT. Chris, welcome back to the best climate realism show in the world. Oh, you're muted.
Well, that was off to. Thanks for having me back on.
Always good to have you here. And it's always good to see you when you're not on the program in the chat. So we're going to be looking forward to interacting with those folks in the chat today. So we will get to that shortly. Before we get started, I want to actually share something with the viewers and listeners of this show. And that is the website we have built to archive all of the 16 international conferences on climate change that the Heartland Institute has put on since 2008. Keely Drukala, our Chief Technology Officer here at Heartland, has been working hard putting this beautiful new website together that is very well organized. And I just wanted to give her a shout out and also show it up on the screen where you can go through all of the conferences that we've had. We've had more than 300 speakers. So there's lots of videos to watch there. On the In the Tank show yesterday, I mentioned how this channel, our YouTube channel has been, shadow banned and it's, always under attack. And in fact, we worked with AI, Claude AI said that Keely was asking Claude AI to help design this website, just a little tweak here and there. And Claude AI told Keely that I'm sorry, we can't help you because you deny climate science. And I just, in good conscience, says this digital being, I cannot help you put this website together. So we were able to do it anyway. But I said at the time on yesterday's podcast that I would put up the record of the scientists and policy experts that have presented now 16 times at our international conferences on climate change, up against the alarmist scientists and experts that the mainstream media has relied upon for the last 20 years. I'll put the record of these presentations up against them any day, and you can check them out now for yourself.
Awesome.
It's
Yeah,
a lot
it was
of fun stuff to look at there on that page.
pretty mind-blowing that Anthropic's AI was so blatant about its its programming there. We talked about it a bit in the tank yesterday, and it was pretty mind-blowing. And of course, if you guys want to go back and watch In the Tank from yesterday, we had Donald Kendall on, who is our AI expert, other than producer Andy in the background, at the Heartland Institute, and he had a lot of great insights on, where this could lead in terms of government censorship as well.
Yep. But we will not be suppressed. And check it. It's climate-conferences.com. Climate-conferences.com. That's how you can get to and check it out. So just wanted to say thanks to Keely. I think it's fantastic, and there'll be more to come.
That's pretty
All right.
cool.
Let's get to it then, as we always do to start off the show with the crazy climate news of the week. Hit it, Andy. Thank you very much, Bill Nye. All right, our first item today I've titled Crazy from the Euro Heat. This is a big story internationally right now, and this comes from The Guardian. Headline, mind-bogglingly crazy. Climate experts alarmed by deadly spring heat waves searing Europe. Anthony picked this one out, and I think it's because it had crazy in the headline for crazy climate news of the week. But also, this European heat wave is something that we needed to talk about anyway, because this is supposedly because humans are causing climate change. We'll see about that. The subhead of this story says, scientists warn of new reality of heat extremes that claim 3 times more lives than car crashes and 16 times as many as murderers. I'll read from the story. Malcolm Mystery knew it was going to get very warm very quickly on Monday morning, but a slow start out of bed delayed his plans for an early game of cricket with his son. It was already 10 a.m. by the time the pair arrived at the sun-soaked nets of their local club in southwest London, and to the embarrassment of the 48-year-old scientist who played cricket in his youth, his body was struggling after just a half an hour of bowling. Had he continued for another hour, Mystery reckons he would have probably suffered from heat stroke. Had he and his son stayed until noon, they would have found themselves straining their bodies in direct sunlight while a nearby weather station logged the UK's hottest May temperature since records began. Quote, I could feel I was panting a bit more heavily, said Mystery, a leading climate and health researcher at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Quote, that's when I said to myself, I need to stop here right now, immediately, before something happens. Maybe this guy should try playing baseball or tennis outside in the summer, anywhere, literally in the United States. Millions do it every year, every day at those kind of temperatures. Anyway, we'll finish up here. This year, summer highs are striking before spring is even over. It may herald worse heat to come as parts of Europe brace for yet another torrid season of punishing extremes. Temperatures over the weekend reached dizzying highs in the UK, which shattered its historical temperature record for the month by a full 2 degrees Celsius. The Monday peak of 34.8 Celsius at London's Kew Gardens was followed by a tropical night at Kenley Airfield with lows that did not drop below 21.3 C, and was beaten on Tuesday with a high of 35.1 C in West London. The Met Office says the temperatures would be, quote, exceptional in the UK, even in midsummer, let alone in May, unquote. In France, where Monday highs surpassed 31.1 C in the southwest, the national warning system was activated for the first time in May since it was introduced in 2004, and 7 deaths were linked to the heat. And here's the kicker. Peter Thorne, a climate scientist at Maynooth University in Ireland, said, quote, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the climate crisis has made heat waves such as the latest ones stronger and more likely. But nevertheless, many of the records being set, particularly in the UK and France, are mind-bogglingly crazy. All right, that's enough with that. Chris, let me start with you. You've been watching, I've been watching your X account on Twitter, yeah, right, this week, and you've been watching the Europe story here lately and pushing back on the idea that this is unprecedented warm temperatures in Europe. So what's your reaction right here?
Well, I think that with Europe, first of all, I know that there's, a lot of their infrastructure and stuff can't handle necessarily. They're not used to stuff like that, for extended periods of time so they should invest in AC for one. But it is true in some regards regarding the meteorological aspects of this, that they have had some high temperature records in recent years. They've had high temperature records set in recent years, and some all-time records too. But for me, it's that why aren't we seeing? We've seen these extreme heat waves in Europe in the last since 2020 or so. But why aren't we seeing them in Canada or Mexico or China or the United States? It's only in Europe. So it tells me what this tells me is that this is natural variability for the most part. There has to be some sort of circulation change going on here that's led to these extremes. If it's CO2, it would target everybody. It's not going to be concentrated in Europe where they're having these, extreme heat events and stuff. So it has to be natural variability. And I think there's not enough research being done about it.
Yeah. Anthony? I mean, I think one of the records they said that they broke was set in 1931. Well, that was a long time ago. It was almost, it was 90 years ago, 95 years ago. And that these things aren't all that unusual, really.
Well, obviously back then, what happened is that climate change reached into the past and made it warmer, right? Is there anything it can't do? I want to point out that the temperature that they cite as a record is 26.4 degrees centigrade. Well, when you convert that to Fahrenheit, it is a horrifying 79.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, geez. Folks just aren't used to a little bit of warm weather because England is so gray and damp all the time. And you get some warm weather, there's a lot of people that are out there celebrating. People go to the beach, But, the Guardian found some woe is me person that created this overly dramatic story about I'm starting to pant. I may not survive much longer, all this other stuff. But when you look at where the weather station is located, and this is a map of UHI, Urban Heat Island, for London, you can see that Kew Gardens is right there in the middle of it. Now, even though Kew Gardens, and I looked at this closely, where they measure the temperature is a grassy tree area, it's a very nice park. It's surrounded by buildings everywhere. And so naturally, it's going to pick up heat from those. And so, this is just another manifestation of UHI. We've seen this time and time again in the middle of cities, where we get this effect of warmer temperatures in the city. It is documented time and time and time again. Of course, the media, they just run with, it's hotter than it's ever been. Climate change must be the culprit. That's all they think about. They never do any simple investigation. And as I've always said, it's like shooting fish in a barrel with these people when it comes to facts. They don't care about the facts. They only care about the narrative. And this particular factoid fits their narrative, so they run crazy with it, And that's why it's Crazy Climate News of the Week.
Absolutely. One of the things I saw today on X, I think it was one of the journalists over there in Ireland posted a study or like a article about a study, and I didn't even have to read the thing to realize that it was going to be an attribution study from World Weather Attribution, because the title of it was Ireland's record high temperature in May was not possible without human-caused global warming, which is just a ridiculous claim to make, right? But of course, all the attribution science is, pretty much what they have to lean on now, since the historical record doesn't back them up. So what they do is they run these models where they, the assumption built into an attribution model is that human emissions of carbon dioxide are making weather worse. And then they go from there. That's not science. It should be a non-starter, but they are hugely popular with like the Associated Press and other mainstream news outlets. These attribution studies were made specifically for climate litigation. so that they can try to not just blame specific weather events on human emissions in general, but their ultimate goal is actually to be able to tie specific weather events and the like damage from them or deaths from them to specific fossil fuel companies so that they can try to put them out of business or at least waste their time and money with this stuff. So it's all rot all the way down.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And in fact, one of the architects behind the attribution papers and all that, and actually who was one of the architects behind world weather attribution, which was initially a joint venture with Climate Central. Well, they that's the scientist, Frederica, whatever her name is. I'm going to link it here in the chat so Andy can pull it up. There's an image here where, from a Political article, where she admitted that these were actually designed with litigation against oil and gas companies in mind. So there's a huge conflict of interest there. And the problem is these courts use it. I mean, there was a heat wave, the 2021 Pacific Northwest heat wave that they had. And if you scroll down, there's an image attached to that has the actual quote in there. It's highlighted. Yeah, right there. And in Washington State, a woman sued, I think Chevron and Shell and a bunch of other oil companies a year or two ago over the heat wave there because there was supposedly the fossil fuel pollution caused her mother to die. I don't know whether or not the case was dismissed or if it went forward or not, but they used these attribution papers, and one of them was the world weather attribution, one on the 2021 Pacific Northwest heat wave. These things aren't science. It's pseudoscience guised, as science, and it's through peer review. But it's not even legit science. The other thing too, that Linnea was talking about is that with the historical records, to add to that, these attribution papers don't include stuff like the 1930s. They don't have that data. They start in like 1950 or 1960. So by definition, the 1930s heat waves could not have happened without climate change. But they don't want to talk about that.
They don't like history.
Well, yeah, but I mean, before we leave this topic, let's take this claim seriously, or at least part of this claim seriously, that you can attribute to human activity the rise in temperatures that are getting dangerous. How do you prove that in court? How do you prove it in a paper that human activity is trumping natural variation? I've yet to see it. If it's maybe somebody has proved it and I've missed it.
They can't prove it. I mean, you can prove probably that CO2 causes some warming, which I even agree with that. But there's a whole bunch of other factors. The climate, as all of us know, is a multivariable system. So we don't know. And they always say, well, the natural forcings are all cooling. If you see those charts from the IPCC where they show that, well, turns out that those are based on models, not actual observations. They can't measure that, so they don't have any actual proof.
And it's bad enough with the attribution studies that they publish a couple weeks or a couple months afterwards, but they have these rapid single event attribution studies that are not peer reviewed, that the same organization puts out like the day of the storm happening.
They did one before a hurricane made landfall.
Yeah, it's so bad. Yeah, anyone leaning on them, it's just they're either completely uninformed on how the science actually works, or they're just pure propagandists and they don't really care. They're just using it for what they want.
How dare you?
That's right. And just and to have the lead of the story. I mean, somebody, he can't go outside and play cricket with his son if it's 90 degrees Fahrenheit. I mean, that means they don't play any cricket. I think they play cricket in India. I think they play a lot of cricket in India, and I don't think it's a problem. I don't think they play in the middle of the night, so it's cool enough for them. But it's just absurd. So anyway,
Speaking of India, real quick, there was this claim that they were having somebody posted temperatures like they were in the hundreds and 110s in India the other day. Like, this is not sustainable. And I looked at the temperature anomaly map; it was actually below average.
I've been doing some looking here while we've been talking about it, and I've located the weather station in Kew Gardens, I'm actually looking at a picture of it here right now. And it's one of the better sited stations I've seen. But as I said, on either side, north, south, east, and west of Kew Gardens is massive, massive urbanization. And so even a well-sited station can be affected by this urbanization. And that's obviously what's going on here.
Right. And it's not a dangerous level of warming, but at any rate.
Nope, it's not. 80 degrees.
Yeah.
People don't die from 80 degrees. That's cooler than human body temperature.
That's true. All right, we'll get down to our second item here. I've titled it Trump Fired Up for Coal. Now, this was a breaking story from yesterday. It comes from Bloomberg. Trump plans $700 million to build coal plants and an export site. President Donald Trump is using Cold War era authorities to dole hundreds of millions of federal dollars to support coal-fired electricity, as well as U.S. exports of the fossil fuel. Trump is expected to announce he's delivering much of the funding for U.S. coal plants and an American export terminal under the 1950 Defense Production Act. Trump's planned initiative is set to include the distribution of $425 million in DPA funds to 13 existing coal plants and $185 million in separate Energy Department grants to help build 2 more in Alaska and West Virginia. Another $75 million would also be made available under the Defense Production Act for the proposed West Gateway Export Terminal in Oakland, California, opening a new avenue to ship potentially 12 million tons of coal from Wyoming, Montana, and other states outside the western U.S. Under Trump, the U.S. Energy Department has issued emergency orders directing coal plants to keep producing power past planned closing dates, arguing that continued operations were necessary to buttress the reliability of the nation's electric grid. The Interior Department has also moved to open more federal land for coal leasing in North Dakota, Montana, and Wyoming, and Trump has directed Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to enter into agreements to purchase electricity from coal plants to power military operations. All right, I think that'll do it for an overview. Linnea, I'll start with you since you used to work in the energy industry. This is a total of 180 from the Biden administration policies. Roughly 40 gigawatts of coal energy was forced offline just during his administration, and now Trump wants to bring it all back.
Yeah, well, coal definitely gets the short end of the stick everywhere. Even right now, I have to remind people as we talk about the expansion of nuclear that coal is still great. It's still a terrific resource, and it's reliable and it's clean with modern technology, and it's available, which is a big deal. The funny thing is that of course, the people who are against this are very angry that we're spending any money on this. They'll point to like, oh, here's the government, giving handouts to fossil fuels again. Well, I pulled up a chart earlier because I just wanted to remind myself what the last couple of years or what recent years of like government subsidies to fuel sources or to energy sources looked like. You see that blue bar on this chart below zero? That's coal. Coal is actually has a net negative in terms of how much money direct expenditure subsidies coal was receiving between 2016 and 2022. And that's partially because of all of the like clean power initiative stuff and the carbon capture and storage and all of that. So basically every speck of subsidy that coal has ever received has been going towards decarbonization of coal, which means just shutting them down, basically. The green bar that you can see on the chart, because you probably can't read the words there, they're a little bit small, is for renewables. So that would be wind, solar, biofuels, all of that. The yellow bar is nuclear, and the blue bar that you cannot even see on the screen, or the like pale blue, is natural gas and oil, petroleum liquids. So the idea that we're doing some kind of like crazy move of funding coal is just nonsense. This is just something that makes sense. We like coal. Our allies like coal, obviously. I mean, maybe Germany will buy a little bit from us. We know that China will. We'll see. I think that this is a very good thing. I think you're going to see a lot of pushback from people who don't understand the technology and don't understand that it is clean, and that even at coal plants, most of the coal plants in the United States use cooling towers, like what people imagine are the nuclear plants. A lot of those are actually coal plants. And they also are pretty much just releasing steam from those towers. The days of like black smoke pouring out of smokestacks is long gone. So I think coal pollution in terms of like criteria pollutants has been reduced by something like 98 or 99% since even just the early 2000s, which it already had been reduced by quite a lot since during that period since the 60s. So it's just, I don't know. The propaganda that they send is that they put out there is kind of crazy. When I was in high school, they showed us this study which was a legitimate study of like dead finches in New York, where you can see the finches were like literally dusty from coal dust residue back in the 1930s and stuff, and they get cleaner over time, these samples of these finches. And the explanation from them is that, well, it's because we went away from coal. Well, the explanation is because we made coal clean. We didn't go away from coal. We shouldn't have started to go away from coal. But yeah, it's great. I love coal. You know me, my background is in petroleum engineering, so I love oil and gas, but I really love coal because the people who work in coal are some of the coolest people on earth. I love our friends in Wyoming and West Virginia and Pennsylvania and everything. So I don't know. I'm excited about this. I like it. Clearly a little bit excited.
A little bit excited. Yes. Well, Anthony, you're muted, Anthony. Go ahead. That's all right. Hold a jam.
All right. All right. So I was just wondering, Linnea, with all of these, laws associated with, clean energy and so forth, is there a coal's law?
Oh my God.
Boo.
Boo. I'm not even gonna
pity the fool.
That's right. I wasn't even gonna give you a
I'm sorry, all I could think of was coleslaw.
Oh, that's good. So, Chris, if you want to weigh in on this, I mean, coal has been demonized, obviously, and as Linnea very, very well laid out, the United States, the energy industry in the United States has invested a lot of money and time and technology in cleaning the coal, what comes out of a stack at a coal-fired power plant. And we're going to need to burn coal for the next at least 100, maybe 200 years in order for the energy needs that we need, and they're increasing with AI. I'd rather have coal plants burning in the United States than in China because they don't have those kinds of standards.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we need to use energy that's efficient and affordable, and coal and natural gas are right there at the top. And and I've always been a person that that has said that I'm all for alternatives, but they have to be sustainable, and that's not what wind and solar are. Maybe locally with solar on your own house, and if you live in like Las Vegas, but that's not going to power civilization. And coal is great because it can be especially for emergency situations. You have a stockpile of it, and it's also affordable. I mean, there's a reason China used it. It's a reason it's their largest source of energy. Everybody always talks about how much solar and wind or whatever that China's adding, but it's only adding, it's not subtracting from their coal consumption, which goes up year after year. And I think they're going to hit another record high this year. And as Linnea said as well, and she explained it perfectly, you have a way to burn coal clean now. I mean, all the pollutants and stuff, you don't see the black smoke, particulates, all that stuff come out of the smokestacks anymore because we're able to burn it efficiently and cleaner. So it's really, and you also don't see, back in there was the Soviet Union, I think, I remember John Christie was telling me how on satellites you could see some of the ash and stuff on the snow. You don't get that anymore because you're able to burn it, and you can see it on satellites, what I was trying to say, but you don't see that anymore because we're able to burn it efficiently and cleaner. And that's why we have technology to improve things. I don't really get why people demonize coal. Sure, I probably prefer natural gas personally, but there's no reason to demonize it. And the people that demonize it, as soon as you ask them to stop using fossil fuels in any capacity, they don't want to do that at all.
Yeah. And go ahead, Linnea.
sorry, there's just a question here that I think we can address really fast during the segment instead of saving it for the end. But Ian asks, is nuclear as affordable as coal in the long term? I think coal is still going to come out cheaper, even if you remove the regulations on nuclear. And it really is the regulatory hurdles to even just build the thing that make it expensive. Yeah. But running a nuclear plant is really quite cheap, actually, because it doesn't need, continuous fuel input. It has the fuel that it has for quite a while. And actually the uranium and stuff is not all that expensive in and of itself. So they're really, really new, really, really fancy, high-tech coal plants are probably comparable in terms of how expensive it is to run them. But, again, you're using coal, fuel continuously for coal. And the regulations are really what make nuclear expensive.
Yeah. And
to add to go ahead, Anthony.
No, go.
What I was going to say is that I haven't run the exact numbers, but one thing I do know is that China builds nuclear power plants very cheap, very, very affordably. And the costs have only continued to decline there. So this claim that like nuclear power is expensive, which a lot of people on the left will bring up, it's not really true once you move the regulations and stuff. But I would say coal's probably cheaper. I haven't looked at the numbers, in depth, but that's what I would say. But yeah, a lot of it's regulatory. But China doesn't have all those regulations. China builds bridges and all sorts of engineering marvels that we used to do. We don't now because there's so much red tape and you have to get permits and pay for this and pay for that. And there's zoning laws. It's so much stuff that goes into it now that they just don't. China's able to innovate in a way that we can't be, haven't been able to in decades because of our regulations.
Yeah, regulations Trump's trying to do it. Regulations hardly ever go this way. They always go this way, ratcheting up all the time. And it makes it very difficult to compete globally. And just one last thing before we leave this topic here. I mean, I'm not a big fan of direct subsidies for anything. So if you're not happy with Trump spending $700 million to help coal get back online, I will note that in the Biden administration in just 4 years, spent somewhere between 300 billion and 400 billion in 4 years to subsidize wind and solar. And then I'm reminded once again of one of those stories that just makes my teeth hurt. Stacey Abrams sets up a brand new fake nonprofit right at the end of the Biden administration. And as soon as Trump is elected and they're shoveling gold bars off the deck of the Titanic, her brand new NGO got $2 billion. So I don't like subsidies either. I don't like direct payments for things. But let's put that in perspective.
No offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
Exactly. All right. Let's move on. This is actually a pretty big story. I added this late to the notes last night, and it's about unrigging climate court decisions. This is a piece from Real Clear Energy. Its headline is "A Quiet Rewrite That Could Shape 1,000 Climate Cases." And this comes from Jeff Reynolds and our friend and previous guest on this show, Kevin Mooney. And we've talked about this topic before, but I think it deserves even more coverage because, as the subhead to this piece says, quote, "Activists have injected agenda-driven consensus into rules of scientific evidence. Chief Justice Roberts has the power to change it back." So buckle in. Let's read a little bit from this piece. "An under-the-radar legal switcheroo should concern every business leader, investor, and taxpayer in America. Now, 23 state attorneys general have taken notice and sent a letter to the Administrative Office of U.S. Courts that bolsters the efforts of 3 eminent scientists who sounded the alarm." Spoiler alert here, those 3 scientists are ones that Heartland has worked with a lot: Richard Lindzen, William Happer, and Stephen Koonin, who, by the way, was a science advisor for Barack Obama. It says here, climate activists have found a way to get their preferred evidence standards into the hands of roughly 6,000 federal and state judges. Before those judges hear more than 1,000 pending climate cases that could reshape the American economy. And they did it through a handbook. The Federal Judicial Center, FJC, and the National Academy of Sciences, NAS, jointly published the reference manual on scientific evidence. Likely very few Americans realize Congress established the FJC in 1967 as the research and education arm of the federal courts and made the Chief Justice of the U.S. its chair. For decades, the FJC collaborated with the NAS to give judges objective, apolitical guidance on how to evaluate scientific claims in the courtroom. The motivation is obvious, if often taken for granted by the American public. Give judges the tools and standards to admit scientific evidence that is objectively true and reject quackery and scientifically invalid hypotheses that would bias the judicial proceedings. The manual is that guidance, and the fourth edition has just been released. 3 eminent scientists who've read the manual immediately started ringing alarm bells. According to Richard Lindzen, William Happer, and Stephen Koonin, its new chapter on, quote, how science works has a problem. In an April 1 letter to Chief Justice John Roberts, the 3 scientists argue that the chapter, which balloons from 18 pages in the prior edition to 65, quietly swaps out the scientific method for something inherently more political. Quote, scientific consensus. The timing could not be more consequential. The letter from the scientists points out that more than 1,000 climate-related cases are now working through state and federal courts, many pursuing damages from energy producers under theories that require attributing scientific harms to specific emissions, which is just something we brought up earlier in this podcast. So, Anthony, let me start with you. We can discuss this around the table, but do you believe Justice Roberts is going to have the guts and the sense to correct this reference manual for scientific evidence to get away from consensus and restore the scientific method?
Well, he has made some interesting rulings in the past that to me seemed very factually based. So I have hope that he will, in fact, go down this route. The bottom line is whether or not, it's right to allow activists to create guidebooks for the law. And from my perspective, obviously it is not. The law is supposed to be blind to these things. That's why the statue has, the Lady of Justice with the blindfold on and the scales. It's supposed to be blind and should be blind to these organizations that are trying to help judges understand climate change. Stop helping. You're not really doing anything but pushing your agenda by doing so.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't have too much to add that I didn't already talk about earlier in the show. I kind of skipped ahead of us a little bit here. I didn't realize that that's what we were connecting to later. But yeah, once again, it's kind of the big question is, how do you even litigate on this kind of thing at all? Trying to introduce something as complicated as climate science to a courtroom. I guess that's why the attribution studies are trying to, hyper simplify it and say, any emission equals some kind of a function of some kind of weather event being scarier than it was before. But really the key to this that I wish that people would explain, especially when they try to use the attribution studies to judges, is, pointing out, look, these guys will look at a storm, figure out any metric at all that was even slightly unusual, which every storm has something that's unusual. That's how you make an average, is with a bunch of stuff that's not the average. So, you say like this storm produced more rain than usual. Well, we're going to connect that to climate change by, saying that the theory that, because warmer air holds more water or whatever, we're going to say that that directly led to this storm dumping more rainfall on this area. Or they'll say, a hurricane, the one that they really like is the rapid intensification right now, because the data just isn't showing that they're making landfall more. So they say, oh, well, there's rapid intensification. Well, once again, like, you really can't point to a particular trend in that. And so it's just, I don't know. Trying to litigate this stuff on the science is going to be quite the uphill battle if we're able to get anyone in the courtroom that's able to actually fight on this stuff, especially when they have these guidelines in place that are so corrupt.
Yeah. Chris, you're a relatively recent graduate with your meteorology degree. So you're closer to being taught the scientific method than anybody else on this podcast. But it seems to me a pretty big tell that an 18 pages in the manual explaining the scientific method being replaced by 65 pages trying to convince people that data doesn't matter. What really matters and what you really need to go by and always obey is if a vote by the certain number of scientists that we set over here and give authority to.
Yeah, science. That's the problem with a lot of people, especially when it comes to people on the left, is they treat science like it's a religion. You can't question it. And for me, science it's a process, and it's a method, and you have to it has to be falsifiable. And the thing is with climate change is that you can't. Everything's a symptom of it. You had a hurricane, that's climate change. You have a flood, that's climate change. You have a drought, that's climate change. If you fall off the bar singing or off the stage singing karaoke like I did last night, it's climate change. But it's that's what it's an issue that has become. It explains everything, and a theory that explains everything explains nothing. So there has to be a testable hypothesis, and they haven't really done that. And Linnea was talking about the rapid intensification and how people point to that. Well, this chart here shows the global number of rapid intensification events. That's defined for those watching when a tropical cyclone, in hurricanes, for those that are not a meteorologist, hurricanes are a subset of tropical cyclones. It's a specific, wind threshold, 74 miles an hour or more. So rapid intensification is defined as a 30 knot or a 35 mile an hour increase in 24 hours in maximum sustained wind speed. So how many of those events have there been globally since 1990? And Phil Klotzbach at Colorado State University was gracious enough to send me the data on this. And I have to get the data from last year to update it, but there's no increase. You see a few years recently where they've had high values, but overall it's neutral or even maybe slightly negative. So they can't really even make that argument when you really look at it. You can see increases in, say, the Atlantic Basin. And there's actually an increase there since 1995, but that's due to the AMO shift. And that's so when I get into these discussions with people, they'll say, well, they'll focus on the Atlantic. You'll talk about like a hot day somewhere, like it's global warming, not local warming. Then you say, oh, here's global hurricane frequency. And then they'll say, well, this is the Atlantic hurricane frequency. They're never consistent.
That is one of the things that drives me craziest about this. The way that they try to use weather as evidence of, climate, any given weather event having anything worse than usual or unusual in any way whatsoever is used as evidence that human-caused climate change is making weather more extreme. Because you can just look at any weather event anywhere in the world, and there's always something going on somewhere in the world that is, pretty extreme, because this is a very, chaotic planet that we live on. And you can find that and focus in on it and say, here's more evidence. But it's not. If it's not part of a longer trend, if it's not part of a, particular data set that indicates that it's getting worse over time, then it's not evidence. And then but then of course, when people make the kind of like boomery joke of, hey, where's all that global warming every time it's kind of chilly outside, they get mad and they're like, that's just weather. Why would you say that? This isn't proof of, but just like a single like cold week or whatever isn't evidence that we're hurtling into a new ice age. Any bad hurricane or any, bad heat wave or something is not evidence that we are hurtling towards, global boiling.
Yeah. So those two charts that Andy just showed, that's the global drought area. And I actually reconstructed this and updated it to 2024. So you can see this is the global area percentage of land area, I guess, in drought. And it's by different categories. From the U.S. Drought Monitor, I calibrated the Palmer Drought Severity Index data to that. There's no increase at all globally. And then in the other chart here, the heavy rainfall. This is actually from David Legate's presentation at the climate conference that we just had. And I watched him do this presentation live. This was probably one of my favorites. Linnea mentioned, I know we're kind of going off topic a little bit. Linnea talked about heavy rainfall and the warmer air, more moisture argument. The thing is that these people, even meteorologists, use this argument, and it's nonsense, because that Clausius-Clapeyron relationship only says that that the vapor pressure, the saturation vapor pressure, how much the carrying capacity, we'll just make it simple here, for water vapor in the atmosphere increases by about 7% for every 1 degree Celsius increase. Well, that doesn't tell you how much water actually evaporates into the air and how much rain falls out of a cloud, much less at what rate. So that's not an appropriate use for that equation. And we can see here that when you had changes in instrumentation, the older rain gauges underestimated the rainfall, because wind will blow it out, and they now have windshields on them to capture more rain so it doesn't get blown, especially in the heavy downpours. And so it's not, so when they've switched to automation, you actually get a more efficient rain gauge. And so you see that big increase in heavy rainfall events after about 1992. And that was what Dr. David Legates talked about in his presentation at ICC 16, which I thought was great. It was really important point that I hadn't thought about before.
You know, speaking of automation, Chris, I have a perfect segue about automation. You know, when I first saw this graph being presented by Dr. Legates at ICC 16, I was shocked, because I had no idea that the modernization of the rain gauge system had created so much variability compared to the simple stick and so forth. You know, it just blew my mind. But I want to get back to the idea of modernization. Now, I found a picture off of Wikipedia of the Kew Gardens weather station, the one that got this tremendously high temperature. And I noticed something. Look at that. They have moved to automation. There's the Stevenson screen on the left, the white box where they have the mercury thermometer. But on the right, there's an automated weather station, and it's got two gill shields. Those are those little stacked dinner plate things that are on the pole. But look, there's a solar panel that has very close to those, okay? Solar panels can get up to 150 degrees in direct sunlight. And they've got these things very close to the sensors. So all it takes is the appropriate wind to blow that right into the sensor, and that would bias the sensor. Now, what's more interesting is that I found an older picture of the weather station. Here it is from Google Earth. And look, there is no automated station there. So they put one in. And all of a sudden, Kew Gardens is getting these record high temperatures. Well, I had thought initially it was UHI. Well, yeah, that's a part of it. But another part of it is those solar panels. They didn't have the good sense to elevate the solar panels way up above the height of the sensors. That's just bad science.
That's fascinating. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I didn't know
There's
that.
no weather station that can hide from me.
I know it's
that's why we love you, Anthony.
It is a wonderful project for you. Actually, you can go.
Sure about that?
We are definitely sure about that. You can go to heartland.org and just type in the search bar weather stations, and you'll be able to track down a couple reports that Anthony has done. The latest one I think was from a year or two ago on weather stations and the problems with them, especially in the United States. So good stuff. All right. Let's move on. I put this in the show rundown because I just came across this actually from a friend who also deals with the climate issue, had shared this in a group discussion. And I thought it was just kind of fun and interesting to look at. We're going to play a video here, and this is your friendly neighborhood scientist, Dr. Herbert Kemsky. If you're of a certain age, he's also known as Mr. Wizard. And he was doing this kind of stuff before Bill Nye did it. But this video takes a little bit of time, but I think it's a good thing to watch and see how actual science was presented to children compared to now. And if you've watched any children's programming, especially where science is involved, you can see how unusual this is today. So let's play that, Andy.
I would like you now to use this long medicine dropper and take water from there and fill this glass so that it's right to the very brim with water.
Okay.
Don't let it overflow, but get it right to the very top. Aha! That's it. Okay, move these out of the way. Wipe everything up so there's no water anyplace. Now my question is, as the ice melts, will the water overflow over the top of the glass?
I think so.
Why?
Well, because like you have the water, and the water is full to the top, and then you have the ice also, and like I think while the ice melts, it'll just overflow.
Okay, that's one theory, and that's definitely a theory, right?
Yeah.
You know what a theory is. Well, there's another theory, which I would like to advance and see how you like that. As you know, ice expands when it freezes as compared to water. That's why ice floats, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So therefore, as the ice condenses, in other words, goes back into water, it should take up less space. Therefore, the water level will drop.
Okay, yeah, I see.
That's theory 2.
Yep.
Now, there's the third theory. Obviously, the volume of the water is taking into consideration the ice that we've got in there. So as it melts, it's not going to change at all, because the volume has already got that ice floating in it.
Okay, I see.
That's the third theory. Which one are you going to take?
Mine. My theory.
The first one?
Yep.
That it's going to overflow.
Yeah.
Okay, now that's why I wanted to wipe up everything so there's no water around any place.
I
We're going to
see.
let it sit there very carefully and melt. It'll take about 2 hours. Can we be back in 2 hours?
Sure.
And I promise I won't touch it.
Okay.
Okay?
Science TV sure was different 40 years ago.
Hi.
Hi, Karen. Ah, you're right on time. 2 hours. You're very punctual. Are you usually?
Most of the time.
Okay. There's the glass that had the ice in it. Don't touch the counter now.
It didn't melt.
And your theory was that it was going to melt and flow over the top, right?
Yeah.
And why was that?
Well, the ice, like it was floating above the top of the glass, so I thought it would melt.
Okay. That was
Go
one
over.
theory. That was no good. Now, the second theory was that the ice expanded as it would change from water to ice,
Yeah.
therefore took up less space, so that as it melted, it would take up less space, so the water level ought to drop.
Yeah.
Did it?
No.
So the third theory, you remember now I told you that as you added water to the ice and you got it all to float, the level of the water took into effect the mass of the ice.
Yeah.
And therefore, as it melted, that water level is going to stay exactly the same. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Learn something today, kid. That's really great. Now, first of all, I watched that. I just thought it was just kind of wholesome and cute, but actually teaching a kid how science really works. A lot of the comments under this, where I saw the clip on Twitter X, said, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's everybody knows that. But when all the ice in Greenland melts and falls into the sea, we're all going to drown anyway. So like, how did the Greenland ice? What? That's right. Yeah. And so obviously it is different if all the ice in Greenland and Antarctica melts and flows into the ocean, but that's not going to happen anyway. And, the whole idea that the Arctic ice, a lot of people think melting Arctic ocean ice is going to raise the level of the oceans. And of course, as Mr. Wizard tells us, that's not true.
Yeah, the only thing that would generate additional sea level rise would be land-based ice that melts and flows into the sea. But ice that's already in the sea melting, no difference.
Yep. I thought you were going to have a joke there. I had my hand on the rim shot just for Anthony.
Oh, well, no.
Occasionally
I do things factually and not funny.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm just comparing that to today, where I think science programs, certainly science classes for children, are teaching not science, but panic, especially when it comes to the climate.
Yeah, like our crazy climate news of the week starter begins lighting although I think he did that for SNL or something, but lighting the globe on fire is not exactly a scientific demonstration.
And in fairness to Bill Nye, he actually did used to teach real science on his show. And even though he's an engineer and not a scientist, but he would still teach science on his show. But then, like everything, ideological capture by the environmentalist left even infected TV shows. All right. And before we move on to the Q&A section, which I know everybody loves, Linnea shared a video that we also want to play just for fun. It's a video comparing electric power tools with gas power tools. And I just want to remind everybody that electric power tools is what the world was trying to make everybody use, no matter what, forever and ever. Amen. And so we'll see how that might have worked out.
You're still using gas, I see.
Electric chainsaw. I got a hedge over there if you want to trim it for me.
You'll be able to chop down this whole forest before you can even get that thing started.
Oh, you're going to get all these trees down before your battery dies in 12 minutes?
It'll last 14 minutes.
As soon as I get this thing started, I'm going to be running circles around you.
Maybe your gas is old and you should go get some more for $6 a gallon.
$6 is nothing compared to your $400 battery.
That's just the cost of going green, my guy.
One, we're literally cutting down trees. And two, where do you think the lithium in that battery came from?
I'll have you know this lithium is grass fed.
Let's settle this right here, right now. Let's see who can cut down the most trees.
You're on. Ready, set, go. Oh, shoot. I gotta charge
this thing started on me running circles around.
As soon as I charge this, you're done, dude.
Maybe I didn't put gas in it.
Nice. Very funny. I actually have an electric tree pruner, little chainsaw. I love it. That works great. Of course, I'm not trying to cut down a whole forest.
Yeah, electric power tools, that used to be corded that are now cordless. That is a whole revolution in personal handiwork that you can use at home. I mean, I have a complete set of DeWalt tools, and I love them. And the lithium batteries are no problem at all. They provide plenty of power. But those things are not being driven out in the weather or through floodwaters, like some of these cars are, or, so they don't self-combust like some of the cars do.
Yeah.
Well, you still don't want to leave your battery charging unsupervised for too long on those, because you never know. You want to be careful with that one. I've seen some sheds burned down from that sort of situation. But I just thought it was funny. I had a friend who had an electric lawnmower that was corded, a corded electric lawnmower. And I know some people have them and they like them. I think it's insane to have to be moving a cord while you're
I used to use one of those. It's terrible.
Yeah, I had one of those too when I was a kid. My mom bought one and I used that one. But actually I have I have not been able to use my grass trimmer for around the fences and walls and things like that because I cannot get the damn thing started. I think it's flooded. I have to take it apart. So I'm actually just going to break down and buy a trimmer that's electric with my Milwaukee battery. So it's just going to be so much easier because I'm tired of pulling that thing up. But I will never go to an electric leaf blower. I live in a forest. I need maximum power on my leaf blower. So that's gas operated for sure. It's the biggest RPMs I can find. But yeah, they are fun. All right.
Yeah,
we just thought that was cute and we had to show it. It was too funny of a video.
You know what's fun to do with a leaf blower, Jim? You strap it to a bicycle and you put it on maximum and that thing will push you along.
It will?
Yeah.
Nice. Chris, do you have any electric power tools that you would recommend?
I like the electric chainsaw. It's actually not bad, but because I go out and cut wood with my dad. Not a fan of the electric leaf blowers, so not a fan. Some power tools are fine, like for screwdrivers and stuff, I guess. Well, those are all electric. Those are battery powered. What am I talking about? I guess the hangover is still getting me.
A gas powered drill would be pretty badass.
I know, right? Yeah, I don't have. I guess I was thinking. I don't know what I was thinking. They're all battery powered, but no, electric chainsaws are pretty nice, especially if you have like multiple, batteries to put in versus having to haul gas. But leaf blowers, that's a different story.
Yeah. Well, what's the thing about these electric tools is that they can be pretty expensive. And so, it's important when you have to be able to afford those things, you're going to need to be able to save for your retirement so that you have some income. You have a way to have a life because you've spent all of your money while you were working on expensive electric power tools. And one way to do that is to visit our sponsor for this show, the Climate Realism Show. And that sponsor is Advisor Metals. Because if you listen to a lot of conservative shows like I do, you hear tons of pitches for buying gold and silver and other precious metals. There are so many companies all over the place that want your business, but we want to tell you why you should trust our sponsor, Advisor Metals, and it's because of the man who runs the company. And his name is Ira Bershadsky. Ira is the managing member of Advisor Metals, and he does not employ those high-pressure tactics or deceptive marketing ploys like many in big gold. He also doesn't deal in so-called rare coins. When you buy gold and other precious metals from Advisor Metals, you're dealing in quality bullion, and that is so much better when it comes time to liquidate this valuable physical asset. And when you buy from Advisor Metals, you will have your investments sent directly and discreetly to your very home. I also want to remind everyone that Ira is a sponsor of this program because he loves the program, but he's also America First Patriot. He doesn't donate to Democrats. He does not work with proxies of the Chinese Communist Party. And he, like us, abhor the machinations and schemes of outfits like the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. That is why we are so proud to have him as a sponsor of this show. So if you want to diversify your investment portfolio, and if you want to back up your IRA with real physical bullion of precious metals, go to climaterealismshow.com/metals. You can leave your information there like so many others have, and Ira will make the process very easy for you. That's climaterealismshow.com/metals. And be sure to tell them who sent you, because that helps us while you're helping your financial future. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Thank you, Linnea, for grinning as you saw that very bad segue coming. Appreciate it. And now let's get to...
It wasn't as bad as coleslaw, though.
It was not as bad as coleslaw. That's a tough one to beat. All right, let's get to everybody's favorite segment, and that is Q&A with Linnea. Take it away.
All right. Okay. So I have actually two questions from viewers of ours that are on the same thing. So I'm going to lean on Anthony and also Chris on this one. There might be differences of opinions. I've seen quite a few different opinions on this. So Engineer Guy says, what's the story on the stories that I'm seeing on a severe El Nino? And Corey over on YouTube says, I've been hearing a lot about this year being a bad El Nino year with droughts and whatnot. Are there comments on that?
Yeah, I have some, and I'm sure Anthony probably will too. We don't really know how strong this El Nino is going to be. I looked at the charts this morning. I think we're in either weak to moderate strength right now, but they're not going to update that intensity yet. It's going to be a few weeks before they catch on. But we don't really know how strong it's going to be. There's been a lot of fear mongering, especially a lot of like AI slop out there on Facebook and X or Twitter. And people just it's like in 18 this is the worst El Nino since 1877 when I had to walk up to school uphill both ways, and it's just nonsense. And they talked about how it's also it killed 50 million people in famine. Okay, that's not going to happen today, folks. It's not going to happen. We're able to mitigate any sort of droughts that might occur in parts of the world because of that, with our technologies. But in the United States, people, when it comes to El Nino, La Nina tends to bring the drought to the United States. We've had this major drought across the Southeast. For the last 2 weeks, it's been nonstop rain, and it's been much needed. And out west, they've had a bad drought, but this El Nino is going to start bringing some relief. And so El Nino is not always bad in terms of weather impacts. It can be good. And also for the Atlantic hurricane season, this hurricane season should be pretty quiet compared to average. So we should have another kind of quiet year like we did last year, which we kind of got lucky with, especially in terms of landfalls, because El Nino increases the vertical wind shear over the Atlantic, and so that'll suppress hurricane development. And it's unfortunately Stan couldn't join today because I know he would talk all about it. But that's kind of my assessment of it. But we don't know how strong it's going to be, and there's no reason to fear monger about it. It could be the strongest since 1877, but I really think that trying to predict that is a fool's errand.
Yeah, well, it is in lots of ways, and this fear that they're generating in the media, of course, is just like anything else with climate. It's model-based. And I have the latest model here. This is from the Climate Prediction Center of NOAA. And there is the forecast. And it's just like a hurricane forecast. It's a spaghetti graph, And so it's looking at, a whole bunch of different scenarios there. It could be a medium. It could be a moderate. it's just not really a problem. That's not outside of the bounds of anything I've ever seen. It certainly doesn't look catastrophic. And so it could go anyway. It could go anywhere. But my feeling is that based on what I've seen so far with the models, and even if you take the model mean, it's not going to be, which is the black dash line in there, it's not going to be catastrophic. The media loves disaster stories. Anything that they can do with a disaster story, they will run with it because it's a clickbait generator. It's as simple as that. Most of the media now has moved over to, websites where clicks equal money. And so it's a simple process when it comes to disaster porn. Follow the money.
We have a question about this chart from Chris Nisbet, who says, what does the y-axis represent?
Well, that's the different month groups. For example, right in the middle, it says JFM. That's January, February, March.
No, why? The vertical.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking about the X.
Yeah.
That is the temperature anomaly in degrees Kelvin or degrees centigrade, however you choose to look at it. But basically, we're looking at for the model means, it peaks at about 2 degrees temperature.
Awesome. Alrighty. We have a lot of good science questions, which always happens when we have Chris on. All right. So from Bo Gus, he says, whenever you talk about the 30s, the alarmists say that was local, not global, with regards, I believe, to the drought. Shouldn't we be responding in kind to the European heat right now? Anybody?
What?
When people talk about like the Dust Bowl conditions and the drought and stuff in the 30s, alarmists will say, well, that was only local temperature and local stuff. So you can't compare it to other heat waves because that wasn't climate change. It wasn't a global thing.
Oh, okay.
So shouldn't we be responding in kind when people try to hype up a European heat wave?
Absolutely.
I get it now. Yeah, there have been other heat waves all throughout Europe that have been documented. As we said earlier, outfits like Climate Central, they do not like history. They never cite the fact that there were major heat waves in Europe, 50 or 100 years ago. They never cite the fact that when those heat waves occurred, because there was no air conditioning, no modern technology to assist people in living whatsoever, lots of people died. For example, in the 1936 U.S. heat wave throughout the Midwest, over 2,000 people died, right? Of course, air conditioning didn't exist then, and they didn't know how to deal with it. There was no, network to distribute how to survive the heat wave. They had newspapers and so forth, but there really wasn't a big understanding of it. And so if that happened today, 2,000 people died, the media would have a heyday, but it won't happen because air conditioning is all throughout the United States. Now, interestingly enough, in Europe, air conditioning is not very common. And it's not going to be very common because Europe has gone down the whole net zero madness, and they restrict things that use electricity. They don't want you to have an air conditioner because that uses too much electricity and it may damage the planet. And screw you if you're going to heat up and overheat and die. We don't care.
Yeah. All right. This is a question for you, Anthony, from K1, who says, isn't a spaghetti graph of an El Nino a culturally mixed metaphor?
So you're saying this is a Mexican spaghetti graph?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go with that.
That's great. I love it.
Very good. All right. Let's see. This is from Bogus again. If we have a second zero Atlantic hurricane landfalls here again, do you think it will be attributed to climate change?
Oh yeah, immediate.
They do like to flip the script. We've seen it happen time and again. Too much rain is climate change. Not enough rain is climate change. Normal rain is climate change. So I wouldn't put it past them to say, the next time we run into a hurricane drought, well, it's climate change. We were wrong the first time. This is really it.
And it's bad. Yeah. It's even worse than we thought.
It's always
I'm
worse.
trying to
You ever notice that?
channel the Archbishop of Ranterbury here.
You ever notice that it's always worse than experts previously thought? It's always worse than we thought. There's never any good news when it comes to the climate panic.
Yeah, speaking of
No.
that, I ran a letter to the editor about 4 weeks ago in the Chico Enterprise Record talking about RCP 8.5 being, demoted to being not possible or impossible, and that science didn't even offer an apology because they'd been used to write all of these papers and scare stories in the press. And I had 3 people write responding to that letter, and they were mad. They were mad that I pointed out that RCP 8.5 is no longer, the disaster scenario of the future. We're not going to roast like they said that we would, and that, little kids don't need to be scared anymore about their future. These people were mad that I pointed it out. You would think that these folks that are so scared of future disaster would be relieved that someone points out that, hey, it's not going to be as bad as we thought. These people love disaster. They live and breathe disaster. They don't seem to have a positive outlook on life. They live this to their cores, and they are, it's their new religion.
I would love to see, I really think that it must be the easiest thing in the world to be kind of like a low effort climate correspondent at one of these major newspapers. I think that you could probably, I could come up with something if we had another hurricane drought like we had until 2017, right? 2016, 2017 is when the one ended where we had 0 landfalls. I am seeing a universe in which you could write a convincing article that says that it's a catastrophe that we haven't had hurricanes in years because hurricanes are an important, energy release valve for Atlantic temperatures. And so because they're not happening, we're warming out of control, worse than we ever thought before.
Well, they do.
Hurricanes thin the herd. We need them.
they do flip the script. There was an article, actually it was from NPR, I think. In 2022, they said that climate change is speeding up the Earth's rotation. Well, last year they said it's causing Earth's rotation to slow down. Well, which is it? Is it speeding up? Is it slowing down? I don't know.
Yeah, you need the hurricanes to make sure. You need the hurricanes to make sure the aquifers be refilled. They'd be screaming about droughts in the southeast if they didn't have a rainfall. So,
absolutely.
By the way, on climate realism, I recently wrote a very detailed article on that whole climate change is causing the Earth to spin slower, faster, or the same, and compared it to some of the stuff that's happened in the past. It's totally bunk, But these low-effort journalists, as you point out, Linnea, they don't care. They don't want to look into it. And by the way, NPR last week got rid of their entire climate desk.
Oh, I didn't know.
that was what they said at NPR outside the parking lot as they were being fired.
All right.
Learn the code.
We have a question from Kite Man Music, which I can answer really fast, which is, how do they dry out the wood pellets which they export to Drax? Drax being the big power station over in the UK that uses wood pellets from the United States and some other places to run it instead of coal. They dry them out in huge kilns. So yeah, not exactly energy efficient. All right. Let's see. Let's go Tom White. Have you discussed revisiting carbon dioxide emissions and global warming implications for society from Queen's University? I don't know if I'm familiar with this one.
I haven't seen it either.
Well, we'll look into it. All right. Let's see. Chris Nisbet asks, are there honest scientists out there who actually believe in attribution science? Okay. I actually think there probably are, but they're not very good scientists. The scientists who think that it's, I guess you could say, politically expedient to promote attribution studies for lawfare purposes and not because they're so rigorous scientifically, are teaching students. and they're likely teaching students that these are valid. I was telling my dad about this the other day. There was someone on X or somewhere who she was a college professor, and she mentioned how often papers that she's been involved in have had fake citations because they just don't have time to check everything they cite for their papers. And she's a university professor in a hard science, or not a hard science, she was just like a sociologist or something, saying this. And so this person is teaching students, and she's likely teaching students the same careless tactics that she uses for her studies. And of course, it didn't go over very well on Twitter. Of course, everyone just like tore to pieces. They said, yes, I do expect you, if you're going to publish a paper, to make sure that all of your citations actually say what you say they say, and two, actually even exist.
Right.
So I think that there are probably scientists who think that attribution studies are legitimate, but they just aren't good scientists.
Nope. You can't rush.
What was that?
I said you can't rush science.
Yeah. Chris, do you have a different take, or do you? I think we've lost him.
Yeah, he doesn't have audio from us apparently.
Okay.
And he wants to make sure he wants to make sure he centers his hat in the shot too, so everybody just looks at that.
Well, I don't. Let's see. Okay, here's another question from K1, who says, how has the World Economic Forum and the broader global elite shifted from preaching total carbon neutrality to managing the pragmatic reality of AI energy demand? How have they shifted? Suddenly, and with a lot of enthusiasm and very little looking back. It's been pretty astonishing, actually. We talked about this a few months ago when Donald Kendall and I actually went to Davos, and also Mark Morano, and wandered around and took a look at everything. And the climate pavilion was an absolute shadow of its former self. They really shifted focus. Everything was about AI. There were a couple of things that were like sustainability and AI or something, but that was really pretty half-hearted compared to where all the money was.
Yeah, the AI revolution is also making interest in nuclear have a big comeback as well. We never thought we'd see that, because the climate activists were generally against nuclear because they're still living in the past and the China syndrome and all that, but now all of a sudden, well, gee, golly, maybe nuclear is not so bad.
Absolutely. And when you have, big companies. So Chris reports, my iPhone overheated and laptop died, had to leave the stream. If anyone has Q&A, he'll just comment in the chat. But I have run out of questions that already came up. So if anyone else, we had a message on Facebook from Lou, who said that please help change the Dems' insane radical climate change agenda in Maryland. There are huge increases in electric and natural gas rates. They're effectively lowering the standard of living for everyone, especially retirees on fixed income.
Look at job for Heartland Impact.
Yeah, we'll talk to Impact and see if they're working in Maryland. We're all over the place trying to bring down energy costs as best as we can with good policy. So, was that the music? Okay.
That was the music. Thank you very much, Linnea, for taking us through the Q&A. Thank you, Anthony Watts, for being here as usual. Thank you, Chris. Chris Martz, wherever you are. Even though your phone and your laptop died, so fun having you on the show. We will have you on again. I know our audience really loves to see and hear from you. And so congratulations for that. And of course, thanks to our audience who are here with us every week. We had more than 1,500 people watching this show live and in a very active chat today. So thank you very much for that. I want to thank our streaming partners who help bring this show to more people. Junk Science, CFACT, CO2 Coalition, Climate Depot, What's Up With That, and Heartland UK Europe. Thank our producer extraordinaire, Andy Singer, behind the scenes. And we're going to have another fun show next week. See you there. Bye-bye.